Pokemon is a franchise that really doesn't need any introduction given how massive it is. It is the highest grossing franchise of all time, so much that its estimated revenue surpasses that of the second and third franchises combined, despite only existing for about a third of the time of those franchises respectively. I'm almost certain that there have been more hours spent playing Pokemon than the combined instances of a human being saying, "I love you," since the dawn of time itself. With the massive success of Pokemon, you'd think fans would be happy with the quality of the games, but truth is often stranger than fiction. And with the reception of Pokemon's quality and reputation as of recently, it has opened the floodgates for competitors to try to take a bite out of the Titan's fingers and toes. So it begs the question, why do I think there will never be another Pokemon game? Obviously, more Pokemon games are being made like Pokemon Pokopia, Champions, and Legends ZA. What I'm really talking about are the competitors trying to replicate the success of the creature collector genre that Pokemon popularized in the mid to late 90s. While there's more types of these games than people who actually want to play them or know about them, I want to focus on two games in particular, starting off with Temtem.
Mr. McGill, maybe we better get you home.
Ernesto, do not speak to me as if I were a child. I'm fine.
For those of you who actually go outside, Temtem is an MMO creature collector developed by Team Crema with a gameplay very similar to that of Pokemon. It's a unique take on Game Freak's traditional Pokemon formula, but being unique is not always a good thing. You start off in your home designated town, you walk in on your unlicensed professor, and you are given one of the game's starter Pokemon called Tems. The core gameplay is Pokemon double battles, but with Temtem's typing and mechanics. The most important distinction being stamina, temporary status conditions, no accuracy on moves, and the removal of critical hits and RNG elements, as every move that can cause an effect will be guaranteed. Now I'm gonna break down why Temtem has been the worst creature collector I've ever made the mistake of playing. Removing RNG in a competitive game isn't something that I would ever object to, and is something I've often wondered about when thinking about Pokemon. Like, we've all been there. We've all missed a crucial move or got hit by a critical hit or received a crippling status, and it all cost us the game right then and there. But the way that Team Crema balanced around no RNG made me drop that thought altogether. Like I mentioned earlier, moves don't have accuracy. There are ways to avoid moves through temporary buffs, but other than that, everything is guaranteed to land. The problem arises when you have to consider the balancing mechanisms. Starting off with stamina. Every move that can be used takes up a resource called stamina. Depending on the effects and or power of the move, it'll either take up a little or a lot of stamina. This is to incentivize a combination of both stronger and weaker moves alongside creating a diverse team composition to switch around your units and encourage strategic play. Or at least, that's probably the excuse. But how it's executed feels significantly more limiting and awful to engage with. You can spend a turn to rest and recover a portion of your stamina, but on the off chance that you decide to use an attack that burns more stamina than you currently have available, you will receive recoil damage and are forced to rest if you want to stay in. And depending on the amount of stamina required, the recoil can and will kill you.
Yes, sirree. Thought about killing myself.
Where things get worse are when you start getting into how certain buffs and debuffs work. Stat changes work just like how you expect them to in Pokemon, but statuses do not. Status effects in Temtem last a fixed amount of turns, some of which can even be overwritten by other effects. But the way that it's implemented makes it feel like a used car salesman grift, since the idea of applying a debilitating status to get the upper hand seems good, but ends up feeling very Sisyphean knowing that it's not going to last longer than a modern streaming service series. Then there's hold moves that kinda work like Pokemon's 2-turn moves, but with none of the satisfaction or alternative ways to bypass the weight like Solar Beam in Sun, or a held item like the Power Herb. Other than these two genome experimental freaks, but let's not talk about them, they're not really important. But truth be told, I don't even think the KFC Colonel's herbs and spices have enough power to save Temtem's flavorless moves that need anywhere between 2 to 3 turns just to use. Certain moves do have synergistic bonuses that can alter their effects depending on certain requirements being met, but I do feel like this is a poor man's way of trying to give the game's unsatisfying combat some depth, since Pokemon provides a variety of ways to add combos and strategies between your ally Pokemon through the countless abilities, items, and move interactions. So I haven't talked about Temtem's aesthetic, music, or setting up until now because I genuinely do not know where to start. Art is a complicated subject considering something one person might find appealing can come across to another person as complete dog shit. I come into a lot of subjects with an open mind, but after playing Temtem for more than I should have willingly done so, Temtem is objectively the biggest waste of time I've ever experienced. more than waiting at the DMV or going to a job interview that insists they're hiring. The world of Temtem takes place in the Airborne Archipelagos, a set of 6 islands that all have different biomes, cultures, and Neopets to imprison in your soul-siphoning physical NFT cards. I cannot get over the art style of Temtem because of how bland and generic it is. The character design for notable NPCs can only be appropriately described as My Sims-like. Random overworld characters are debatably even worse in this aspect. Champ, if you keep dressing up like that, you're gonna make Hank Hill's fit look like red carpet material. What makes Temtem feel forgettable enough to look past but memorable enough to hold an opinion on how shitty it is how it handles presentation. The tone of the game isn't all too different from what a normal Pokemon game would be, but later shifts tones much like a 21st century schizo man suffering from multiple personality disorder. The game really tries to be quirky with almost every single piece of dialogue available, and under normal circumstances I wouldn't have a problem with this. I like the Mother series, a franchise that is praised and beloved for basically daring to be unique and quirky during a time where there was a set expectation for RPGs, and is arguably one of the most influential games of all time. But unlike Mother, Temtem does not have the same charisma or social skills to be half of what Mother is or even Pokemon offers. Most of the places you visit often feel large, barren, or just outright feel like a cheap imitation of pre-existing Pokemon locations, but without any of the charm or appeal. Temtem also doesn't respect the player's time on several instances. Your starter takes about the same amount of time it would to pass a kidney stone to evolve. There is a lot of pointless dialogue and dialogue options that don't add anything other than wasting time and delaying the unsatisfying gameplay loop. Moves, items, and even text entries have a lot of flavor text that reads like it was written by a teenager in the early 2000s with half a semester's worth of creative writing under their belt. Progress of the main story feels like a 9 to 5 where everything goes wrong since there's an ungodly amount of backtracking without the ability to fly to previously visited towns outside of an item that only can be obtained in the late game. Yeah, a game made in 1996 for the Game Boy gave players more quality of life traveling options than a modern multi-platform game made for early access in 2020 and then made a complete package in 2024. Not even the bootleg repels work, despite most of my scuffed specimens having a higher level than what can be encountered. What makes things worse is that Temtem has the audacity to make certain story beats locked behind mandatory side quests, 2 of which are donating 2 specific abominations, one of those 2 having a 5% spawn rate in a cave with little significance. The bullshit collision boxes and poorly programmed code that makes Bethesda games look like a golden standard for polished games. The levels of trainer battles near the end game spikes faster than my blood pressure in a poor attempt to create artificial difficulty. And the most egregious offender being how much Team Crema tries so unreasonably hard to make the stupid phrase, Temtem up, stick through the majority of trainers that talk to you before battling. And while I can go on about the fuck-ups that Temtem makes in a poor attempt to be cool, like forcing a loss on your first battle and introducing shiny Pokemon in a tasteless way that comes across as Reddit-esque, not to forget how abilities and item activations will pop up mid-battle and bloat the pace of the battle even further without elaborating on what they do, I'd rather not give this game any more of my attention and move on to another game that's actually good. I almost forgot, but on the off chance you somehow like Temtem for some reason, or just to be a contrarian, you can't even play the game offline.
Know your fucking place, trash.
Palworld's first introduction to the world was on June 5th, 2021, but where it really blew up in popularity was during 2023's Summer Game Fest, and people immediately jumped to the conclusion that Palworld was just going to be Pokemon with guns, and honestly, that description does not do Palworld justice in what it offers. Palworld is an open-world survival action-adventure creature collector developed by Pocket Pair. Palworld starts off with your character being thrown on the island known as Palpagos, and from there, the world is yours to explore. There is no direct narrative, instead opting for environmental storytelling as you explore the world and its darker comedic tones. The gameplay loop is so vast with the amount of mechanics present that it all feels a bit overwhelming at first. The best way I could possibly describe it is Ark Survival with a bunch of other mechanics from different games sprinkled all over it that just so happens to have Pokemon. You catch the creatures on the map called Pals with what are essentially Pokeballs in all but name. The only difference being that you have to actively fight the Pokemon by any means necessary in order to weaken them for catching. You can even catch people and force them to associate with you. But in order to get stronger, you need to engage with the main feedback loop, which is base building and resource management in order to progress in technology and essentially become the super mega ultra capitalist conglomerate and shoot down anything and anyone that gets in the way of you and your Pokepals. That's the general summary of Palworld, but since it has Pokemon, I have to talk about that some more. So it's no secret that most of the gremlins in Palworld have an uncanny resemblance to existing Pokemon, despite Pocket Pair's claims. But this is obviously a mini G-Max shiny Eevee. There's a lot more examples of this, like My Neighbor Electabuzz and the dedicated industry furry plant, Salazzle. But there are some original gems in this recycling bin of an asset flip. Not every design is good, but by God, does this frog make up for everything. This thing's name is Crojiro, and for some reason, it is an aquatic Usain Bolt and has the ability to inflate like it's fucking Lanky Kong and act like a trampoline. This is unironically the greatest thing Pocket Pair has ever created. So each Pokepal you catch is legally obligated to fight for you regardless of the odds, but each species dabbles in a combination of traits to help you get your small business to soon be monopoly off the ground. Sure, you can pretend this is Pokemon and form unbreakable bonds on your quest to be the kingpin in this Mad Max world. But alternatively, if friendship is not your style, you can lean into the darker tones of Palworld and just abuse your freshly curated homunculi for your sociopathic gains. Such activities include but are not limited to unethical genetic experimentation, labor in the salt mines, and live executions that would have OSHA foaming from the mouth if they ever heard about it. Palworld is a great game and is even more fun when played with friends, but I can never see Pocket Pair's cauldron of gameplay mechanics and goofy goobers be a proper replacement or even a side grade to Pokemon. Whether you like Pokemon or not, even now after the several controversies that the company has committed through its history, it cannot be emphasized enough how much of an impact the franchise has had on the world. While I do think Palworld is a great game worth its time and success, I have to point out that part of its success came from Pokemon fan outcries and frustrations that became more vocal when it was announced not every Pokemon would be available to be used in future games, starting with Pokemon Sword and Shield. Pokemon that weren't programmed to be in the game would be left in Pokemon Home Purgatory until they were given a place to go. That frustration hit its breaking point when Scarlet and Violet were announced, and even with all that said, there are several reasons why Pokemon is still successful and maintains its fan base. There are over 1,000 species of Pokemon, 1,025 to be exact, along with regional variants, alternate forms, Mega Evolutions, and Gigantamax forms to push the amount of variety the Pocket Monsters offer even further. There are cats, Pikachu, fake Pikachus, dogs, birds, fish, dragons, lizards, frogs, turtles, resurrected fossils, man-made creatures, everyday objects, dead people, dead Pokemon, furry bait, actual deities, aliens, Pokemon from the past and future, a literal fruit, and a fucking piece of wood with a koala attached to it. You could confidently make the argument that every Pokemon has a fan behind it, and that there is at least one Pokemon that each individual will like. Me personally, I love this fucking bird. I cannot say the same for Palworld, and I sure as hell wouldn't be caught dead saying that for Temtem. I didn't even mention Temtem's secondhand Temu Tamagotchi designs because they look like DeviantArt monster OCs without the creative passion of a teenager to back them up. And that's just the Pokemon. Character designs for Pokemon are amazing. Sure, there are some stinkers, but that's to be expected for a series as diverse and ongoing as Pokemon. People will not shut up about this woman when she literally does nothing but rely on you to fix all the problems going on and battle you at the end of your journey. Even the generic NPCs are pretty solid too. Palworld has a few notable designs, but the rest of them are asset flip designs. And I don't even want to talk about Temtem. Then there's the world building through the variety of locations and mythos, like how Cinnabar Island goes from a fully inhabited place with a gym and laboratory, but in 2 short years it becomes the victim of an active volcano despite all the water Pokemon surrounding the island. The Distortion World is literally a place that has no life, no laws of physics, and only exists to contain and punish Giratina. End's castle surfaces from the ground and surrounds Univa's Pokemon League after defeating Alder, and in Black and White 2, instead of getting rid of the place altogether, the remains of his castle are buried underneath the complex cave network inside Victory Road. There are so many instances of developing on pre-existing events and building upon them. Pokemon Legends Arceus is literally a game where you get isekai'd into Sinnoh's first settlements when it was first known as Hisui and help the people live alongside Pokemon. The way that events are tied together makes the world feel real. I don't even think I have to talk about Pokemon's combat since it's been consistent with the same turn-based mechanics with small yet significant changes to the game's balance with each new generation. Held items, abilities, the physical special move split, the introduction of hidden abilities to add flexibility to Pokemon, Mega Evolution, Z moves, Dynamax, and the most recent addition is type changing through terrestrialization. Pokemon is generally one of the most complicated turn-based strategy games to analyze in a competitive lens, and going further in depth about all the nuanced decision-making and synergies between Pokemon that the game has to offer would bloat the video's length even further, whether I talk about the unofficial fan-curated competitive singles format or Pokemon's official VGC doubles format. Then there's the music that ties everything together for the franchise. Pokemon's soundtrack tends to vary from game to game, but they always deliver in either moments that they play in, or most importantly, the battles. Take National Park in Heart Gold and Soul Silver for example. It's just a normal park with no real relevance to the game's story and offers nothing other than some hard to find bug Pokemon during the bug catching contest. But the music! The way that the piano plays in the opening, followed by all the other string instruments and the percussion of the drums into the later portion of a guitar, that song alone makes National Park such a memorable place in the Pokemon universe, not just for me, but for a whole lot of people. There's plenty of other examples like this that just add to Pokemon, but one of my favorite battle themes comes from Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and it's Zinnia's battle theme. The explosive opening with the violin and cello followed by the glockenspiel in the background and the accordion taking turns in the spotlight with the violin really play into creating such a memorable moment in the game's Delta episode. Palworld doesn't have that much music to create moments like Pokemon does and is more reliant on ambience, while Temtem is just bland and has a score that doesn't add anything to its setting or battles. I can go on and on about the high points Pokemon has over its competition, like its never-ending list of collaborations. And I know Palworld has collaborated with other indie titles like Terraria and is getting a future collaboration with Ultra Kill, but Pikachu's got his dirty little rat hands on every corner of the media. Pokemon's collaborated with Adidas, Converse, Puma, North Face x Gucci, Balmain, Oreos, Legos, Build-A-Bear Workshop, the Van Gogh Museum, Santa Cruz Skateboards, Post Malone, Katy Perry, Ed Sheeran, and Hatsune Miku. 18 separate Miku designs were made for each Pokemon's typing. And Toby Fox, Mr. Undertale/Deltarune, who did a single song in Sword and Shield, but came back for Scarlet and Violet and dropped the best final boss theme in a mainline Pokemon game. Pokemon even got Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre, a wrestling organization in Mexico, to collab with them to promote Legends ZA. Lest we forget, Pokemon Go's initial release period was the closest we ever got to knowing what World Peace was. Then there's the anime, movies, mangas, spin-off, merchandise, trading card game that is currently being ruined by scalpers valuing cardboard more than actual currency. Pokemon's success could also be attributed to being released at the right place at the right time and maintaining goodwill up until recently. But then there's also the thematics behind Pokemon, like exploring the world around you, meeting new people, creating rivalries and strong bonds that last a lifetime while growing as a person. As cliche as it all sounds, the way it's presented is very impactful and Pokemon's longevity is proof of it. Just think about all the people that have made their careers around this franchise. And I don't mean the obvious people like Satoshi Tajiri or Junichi Masuda or even Ken Sugimori. I'm talking about the people who make content around Pokemon, the ones that stream it, and the people that make it a part of their daily life. Hell, people still make ROM hacks and fan games of Pokemon's IP despite knowing the potential of having all that hard work be taken down. All this is to say Pokemon is everywhere, and while I think the Switch's life cycle is where Pokemon's quality really went to shit, I could still at least enjoy Scarlet and Violet for what they were, and apparently so could everyone else considering Scarlet and Violet are the second best-selling Pokemon games of all time, while Sword and Shield are sitting pretty in third place. So much for boycotting. And while I do think there are some locations in both games that have a lot of love put into them, like Spikemuth and its attention to details and atmosphere, Area Zero's presentation and build-up, the Gen 1 sprites in Alfredana City, Port Marinato's water Pokemon tiles, and Lavencia City's advertising boards showing off their characters and Pokemon, I do think it's very telling that my favorite Pokemon games on Switch were Let's Go Eevee, which is a revisit of Kanto with Pokemon Go mechanics and Mega Evolution, and Legends Arceus, which was a game that actually tried to do something new with its gameplay mechanics and storyline. It's kind of sad that there really isn't another franchise to sort of make Pokemon and by extension Nintendo sweat, and actually try harder on the quality of the mainline games. But Legends ZA does look promising, and with no mention of Gen 10 in the near future, I am cautiously optimistic for what lies ahead in Pokemon's future. Nintendo did patent some mechanics. Number 124093887, or Patent 387 for short, covers gameplay mechanics that allow the player to summon a rideable mount that automatically changes depending on the terrain being traveled without a manual input. And number 124033397, or Patent 397 for short, covers a gameplay mechanic in which a character in a space summons a secondary character or sub-character in the same space to engage in battles with enemies either manually in the first mode or automatically in the second mode based on character input. And while people have misinterpreted this as something that could lead into the shutdown of games like Persona, SMT, and all the other creature collector games, due in part to news media outlets clickbaiting and hyperbolizing statements for the sake of revenue, I feel like this is forced dooming out of ignorance and lack of transparency. Several companies patent mechanics that seem very vague at surface value, but aren't as simple when you really get into the details of it all. And while I'm not qualified to go deeper into the complicated world of Law and Order and the lore behind it all, I can at least recommend Moon Channel and the very insightful videos they produce if you're interested in learning more. Please, go check them out. Anyways, Patent 397 is the main suspect for causing panic across the internet. When at its simplest, this is just a Let's Go feature introduced in Scarlet and Violet, a mechanic that no one has ever thought of implementing until now. And while I'm not all too concerned about it, Pokemon is just too big to fail now. No matter how you feel about the situations going on, people are still gonna buy the games. I am still gonna buy the games. Maybe I'm a part of the problem. If you liked the video, you should like the video. Consider subscribing. It's free, and it lets me know that people like you want to see content like this. Until next time.